Good afternoon. Welcome to WiTalks. WiTalks is very happy to invite you to this exclusive live session. Our guest for this evening is someone with an amazingly wonderful journey through her life, and I'm pleased to introduce Anita Vasudeva. Anita's vision rests on the belief that life is and can be joyous, and that there is power in the self and community, and that we have the ability to transform our own lives, our work, and our responses to that joy with awareness, clarity, and authenticity. Anita is a leadership and executive coach, a consultant, and the focus being on conscious leadership, systemic change, personal growth, and awareness. She also works in the culture, diversity, equity, inclusion, and communication space. Deeply empathetic, and with a keen understanding of the multiple aspirations of all stakeholders, Anita has been a value building partner, enhancing individual, cultural, and organizational potential. Anita has over 4 decades of work experience. After 16 years in the corporate tourism industry, she turned to being an entrepreneur and founded the first travel portal in India. Then she set up a business consulting firm and then founded a first enabling platform for women in India, which promoted diversity, getting back to work, and flexibility. She has also co founded the Foundation for Working Women, addressing gender challenges at work, and has been an advisor to various social organizations. A writer and editor as well for the past decade, Anita has dedicated herself to coaching and creating conscious empowerment. She's a certified coach from Ericsson International Coaching and has more than 1,500 hours of coaching experience with business leaders, executives, entrepreneurs, individuals, groups, and teams. She's also an advanced practitioner in PACT. She has completed various coaching, learning, and developmental programs and modules that support her work. An English literature major from Lady Shri Ram College in New Delhi, with a social communications postgraduate from Mumbai University. Anita is currently based in New Delhi. She continues to be a student of philosophy and spiritual study. She also has a keen interest in theater, art, language, and media. Today, she's going to spend time with us talking about the power of mentoring. And I'd like to welcome Anita.
Good evening, Rucha. Thank you. Thank you so much for your welcome. And I'm really happy to be here. Good evening to all of you who are listening as well. Very happy that you have had me. Thank you for that.
Welcome, Anita. And we are looking forward to this conversation. In these times, with the current stress and everything that's happening in the world, I think mentoring has come center stage right now, and someone like you has so much to contribute to society. Could you take us through your journey till now?
I think you did a little of that, Rucha, already when you were introducing me, and that was a great, rather detailed introduction, and also true. So it's been a long and very satisfying work journey and life journey. I somehow find it difficult to separate the two. If your work is joyful and happy and meaningful, then so is your life. And you're absolutely right. I did literature. I really wanted to become a journalist and wanted to write, and went on to do my communication media, fell in love with filmmaking, did that for as long as I could. And in those days in Bombay, you earned about 200 rupees making as an assistant director or producer making movies. And I wanted to travel, and that took me into the tourism and travel trade, where I stayed for 16 years, which was wonderful because I traveled the world. I also learned how to set up businesses at somebody else's expense. So it was wonderful. And in the year 1999, actually moved to New Delhi. And that's when I turned entrepreneur. Somebody I knew wanted to set up the first travel portal and asked me if I'd partner. And it was too exciting an idea to give up on. As I'm talking to you, I also realized that one of the things that has been at the core of what I've done in my journey is wanting to see ideas come to life. And so here was another big idea, and I did that. Post that, when it was up and running, I started with another partner, a business consulting firm. And that's really where I started doing, I didn't know it then, a lot of coaching and a lot of mentoring, because I was working with CXOs within companies. And we also set up the first enabling platform for women called Flexi Moms. So I was coaching a lot of women. I was consulting and coaching and mentoring with organizations on diversity. And when that platform became more about just recruitment, I realized that what I wanted to focus on was the coaching and the mentoring part. And so I became a dedicated coach. I've been doing that for 10 years. And that's where I am.
So thank you. You've brought up two very interesting words, coaching and mentoring. In today's world, I myself, being an HR professional, have no clue what the difference between the two is. Could you just elaborate what is coaching, what is mentoring? If I have someone in my life who's guiding me, why can't they play both the roles?
And they can. And they can. And you're right, there is so much overlap in the two roles that it's very easy to confuse the two. So if you both require a coach and a mentor are to be people who you trust, right? Who are to some or to a large extent invested in you, and who will work with you with your goals, right? So in many, many respects, they are very similar. They're very similar. Here's what I think a little bit where the difference comes in. A coach you normally work with on a short-term basis, and by short-term, I mean it could be 3 months, it could be 3 years, but it's short-term. A mentor tends to be someone who you work with over the years. Tends to be, again, I'm not putting this into a box, because you can have a mentor for a shorter period of time. A mentor usually comes with, is usually someone who is your role model, who has similar values, who also comes with their own experience. And through that experience, they are guiding you and they're advising you and they're telling you what to do and what you can do. A coach, I find, on the other hand, when I don my coaching hat, I'm really looking for you to find your answers, and I'm nudging you and helping you explore and finding your authentic core. What would be right for you? I want you to own that rather than me tell you, hey, I did this and why don't you look at that? Right? Those are some of the differences. A mentor could be a life mentor, so could be mentoring you on life itself. Could be a business mentor, in which case a lot of business mentors come from your own area of work. A coach doesn't need to come from your own area of work, even if you're discussing business strategy. So those are the somewhat differences. There are coaches who you become close to, have a relationship with, who become your mentors. And there are mentors who are really skillful at the art of coaching. And so there is an overlap.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So tell me, how important have mentors been in your journey? Because your journey has been a very diverse journey, and you've explored new things. And yes, I'm sure you have needed some handholding. So can you recount your own experience of how important is it to have a mentor to become successful?
So when I was younger, mentoring and coaching hadn't become these big words as they are now. You did have coaches and you did have mentors. You just didn't call them that. You didn't realize that this was really my mentor or somebody who was mentoring me. And when I think of the word mentor, I always think of it in the literary sense. you do know that Mentor was the very dear friend of Odysseus, who was the hero of the Greek epic Odyssey. And not only was he a dear friend, but he became the teacher for Odysseus' son Telemachus. Okay? And and Mentor came to mean the wise counselor, the teacher, the one who guided. And literally for me, that's what mentoring always meant, will you. And when I think about my journey, I feel my mom was my first mentor, and she mentored me through life. And she had all the qualities that I spoke about just now. I trusted her. She was invested in me. She was invested in my goals, not in her goals. She had her experience that she was sharing. So she clearly was my first. At different times, there have been different people. My first boss in the tourism business, Mr. Tej Sani, was a huge mentor. Even today, I say a lot of my work ethic comes from him. And for many, many years, 15, 16 years, and even later, when I would call him and say, hey, I'm doing this, he had the openness to say, great, I'm glad you like it. I just don't think you're doing the right thing. And that would tell me, okay, you can do it if you want to, but think about it. So for many years, he was a huge mentor for me. There have been many others in smaller phases. I have a friend, Preeti, who's been a huge mentor in my coaching journey, without again my realizing it. And if I may, I'd also like to share here for those of you who are looking at mentorship. I discovered that I actually lacked a mentor who could have set my life on different courses in different ways. I have no regrets, but I can quite clearly, looking back, see if someone had told me this, I would have done this differently. Yeah? And that has shown me the need, the importance of mentorship. I could have saved time. I could have thought through critically different things. I could have shortened the learning process and made it sharper, edgier, which may have been fun as well. And that lack actually helps me mentor better, other people better, because I'd like them to sort of jump those hurdles and take shortcuts and use my experience and other people's experience. So yeah, it is important, I think, especially in today's complex days. Life was simpler 20 years ago. It is more complex. The choices are so many. The paths that you want to travel are so many. Which way do I go? How do I go? But this is me and this is what is required of me. How do I do that? Should I change? Should I not? Should I stick with myself? What should I do? Is this will get me great success in one way, but this will get me great success in the other. The questions are far too many. The choices are too many. So that need for mentorship has really grown, And the environment outside, you're absolutely right. Look at the pandemic. The environment outside is so complex, and it's changing all the time. It's dynamic, And having said that, is it imperative to have a mentor? No, you can be successful on your own, It's not that you can't. You can be your own champion, cheerleader, mentor. But hey, having one really helps.
So where do I find a mentor, and how does the professional and personal life, do I find someone in my personal life? Do I find someone in my professional life? Is there an overlap or watch out? Where do I go find the right mentor, especially for if I'm just starting out in life? How does one find a mentor?
Yeah. And it's usually a tough one starting out. The thing is that if you are conscious and aware of the fact that you're looking for someone who can mentor you, then you will start observing certain things about the people around you. And they could be people in your personal or professional life. One of the things you will look at is, who do I look up to? Whose life stands out for me? And this happens professionally as well as personally. who do I look at and say, hey, I'd like to be like that, or I'd like to achieve those kind of things. And that's those seem to be the values. I don't know yet, but those seem to be the values that I want to live by. It's resonating with me. And that really is the first clue that this person, this woman or this man is the person I need to approach, and really find out. The second thing that happens is really summoning up the vulnerability and going up to the person and saying, would you mentor me? And sometimes we stop at all ages, Richa. I mean, I was telling a fellow coach the other day that I was listening to a very senior coach mentor about 2 months ago. And I wanted to write to him and say, hey, will you mentor me at this stage of my coaching? And I still haven't done it, So one stops at different stages. And I should. And I'm glad we're having this conversation because I probably will do it immediately after this call. So summoning up your vulnerability and saying, let me ask, what have I got to lose? And then assessing, is this person interested in me? And you'll know that over a couple of conversations, because sometimes you have a great role model in your life or in your profession, but that person is sometimes more interested in sharing their experience and is not on your page. And it's important for you to feel that this person is interested in me and understand where I want to go.
Right. So I loved how you said that you need mentors at various parts of your life. And it's never too late to have a mentor. It's never too early. And like you said, it could be your own mother, it could be a friend, it could be at work. So that's amazing learning. You must have been a mentor for so many people. Is it a one-way relationship, or is there something that you take away? Any examples that stand out? Anything you could share with us?
Yeah, and you and I both know it's never a one-way relationship. I mean, this conversation is not a one-way relationship. From the questions you're asking me, I'm also learning. Just like I learned right now, oh God, I better go and send an email to that person that I wanted to send it. No, it isn't ever a one-way relationship. So I'm going to use the word mentoring very loosely. I started counseling, mentoring when I was really young. I must have been 25, 28, and I realized that I was working a lot with people who were coming up to me and saying, help us think through things. And at that time, I said to myself that I need to gear myself up professionally for this. So while I was in the tourism business, I did a 1-year program from Tavistock University, London, just to understand more about psychology of people and when you're actually doing counseling. And I was doing a lot of pro bono mentoring and counseling at that time. As a part of that, you were share with me examples of mentoring. And the first thing that stands out is, as a part of my program, I had to actually mentor young children in a school. And I was in a school where a lot of the kids came from homes which were underprivileged and had all sorts of challenges. And I must have been, 25, 27, I don't remember what. And it used to be heartbreaking for me. I had to be the wise mentor. I had to be able to allow that child to tell me and guide that child, and my heart would break. I would cry all the way home from school when I used to go to the school. And so when you say, does it impact the mentor as much as the mentee? Oh, yes, it does, And it's only as you grow in your coaching and mentoring that you learn to be there and not be there. And you learn to sort of bring all of yourself into the mentoring and yet not get so impacted and let your own life get stronger. So that's the first thing I do remember. Later on, when I turned entrepreneur and I came to New Delhi, I started something called Let's Talk, which was a pro bono thing for young adults and young professionals. And I would do that on a Saturday, Sunday, where a lot of young professionals would come in for mentoring. That was very interesting. And I also found that's where I started really defining for myself the basis of most things arose in the self. So people would come for mentoring for business and for professional stuff. And finally, we'd go around and round and chat and talk. And it would come down to what's happening within yourself and what's happening within your relationships and what's happening, how you approach yourself and others. And so that helped me, myself, tie in a lot of things and realize that, even when people are talking about professional success, they're at the same time talking about personal success. So when people talk about work-life balance, for me, it's not work-life balance, it's work-life integration. Because really, your work is your life and your life is your work too.
Very true. Very true. Amazing insights. So we have a question from someone who's saying, taking up on the theme of reaching out to someone to ask them to guide you. So the question is, how do you contact and convince an expert to guide us, even if it is for a short period, if we don't know each other before? So any thoughts you have on this? Because like you said, there's an hesitation, and then to reach out to someone you don't even know. How, any recommendations or thoughts you'd share on that?
Yeah. So the first thing you could, of course, do is if you know someone in common, like if the person is within your industry or at your workspace and you don't know that person, he or she is too senior or is in a different area of work, then try and see who do you have in common who could introduce you. That's one. Believe me, actually going up to the person, even if you don't know them, and saying, may I have 5 minutes of your time, works 9 times out of 10. It's worked with me asking for mentorship, and it's worked with me when people have asked me for mentorship. And actually saying that I have been following you and this is what I do. I would love being mentored by you if you're free to do so. Here's something I've learned over the years, and I want to just share it because it's my experience. People love to help. When you ask them to do something for you, there are very few people who say, no, I can't do it. Especially when you're telling them that who you are is what I want. Who you are is what I want to be.
Amazing. That's amazing. It's really amazing. So, what about you? What made you decide I want to do this? Was there a single moment or a thought? How did you go down this road of mentorship? You said you started as young as 25. So was it always there, or any specific thoughts or ideas that inspired you to walk the path of being a mentor?
So initially, like I said, I didn't think of it as mentoring. I thought people were talking to me and I was talking to them. And I thought it was a two-way conversation. I didn't think I was the mentor as such. But I also found that a lot of the time there I was saying, hey, why don't we try this and why don't we try that? And so I said, okay, I need to know what I'm doing. And I thought of it more as counseling than mentorship at that stage. It's only later this really got defined for me when I was running a consulting firm and also when I was running Flexi Moms. And I was coaching a lot of women professionals who were getting into back to the workspace or who were working. And I was also talking to corporates and talking about diversity and inclusion. Also in consulting, talking to CXOs on how to run their business, and what are the challenges. That I realized I was doing more than consulting. I was coaching. And sometimes I was doing not just coaching, I was mentoring. It was long term, it was invested, it was about me and my experience and they and theirs. And you know how it is with synchronicity and what happens in your life. There was a friend of mine who introduced me to something called the polarity approach to continuity and transformation. It's called the PACT approach, and it's the founder is an American, and as an American company, they wanted to come into India, and they said, would 2 or 3 people like to learn about it? And I said, yeah, sure, because it resonated so well with me. And before I knew it, I'd done the course, and I was an advanced polarity practitioner, and I was saying, wow, how do I apply this? And then the same friend who introduced me worked in a company, and she said, would you like to come in and coach our leaders? And I said, yes, without thinking about it, because it worked so well with the way I thought and believed life worked. And I suddenly realized that's who I was. I was a coach, and I should have been a coach 20 years instead of 10 years ago.
That's amazing. That's really amazing. Uh, so, uh, so you're saying to be, and this is a question that's come in, is there a difference in consulting and counseling? Does one have an edge over the other, or what are your thoughts on that?
Again, different needs at different times, so consulting would bring in practices, consulting would have clear objectives, consulting would actually bring in not just your experience but an analysis of what's happening, what are the needs, what should be done, a plan of action, whereas a counseling is more of an exploration into what's happening, more of a partnership, closer to coaching, more guidance and advice based than say coaching, closer to mentoring counseling would be, whereas consulting would call upon far more amount of skills and strategy and process and framework.
Thank you. That clarifies.
I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. And for whoever's interested, do Google, because it's very exciting. Since the overlaps are so many, it's exciting to see the differences as well.
That's interesting. That's really nice. And yes, you made it very simple and easy to understand. So let me ask you, looking a little forward, for emerging women leaders, all these youngsters who are coming in, if I asked you, what are the top 2 or 3 strengths that they need to adopt to be part of a senior leadership role, or even as an entrepreneur? Any thoughts on that?
Okay. Yeah, there are so many that are there, but I'm trying to sort of bring it down into 3, the main ones that I think about when I think about what do you do to have a life which is successful, to lead in a successful way. So I want to kind of also say to you that here's what leadership means to me. So when you say senior leadership roles, your designation doesn't matter. Leadership is about how you lead yourself. Eventually, how you lead yourself will be how you lead others, right? And as you become more and more senior, that gets deeper and more intense, and your responsibility becomes wider. Your impact is wider, and that's quite lovely about senior leadership roles, really. So here are the 3. Let me try that I think are the top on my list. And the first will be a very strong sense of self. I do believe that to be a great leader and to be successful, you can either have it or you can cultivate it. A really strong sense of self, of who you are, what your values are, what do you hold worthy within yourself, because all this results in confidence, it results in fearlessness, it results in knowing what your values are, in being aware and conscious of the actions you're taking, and the way you're leading. So for me, topmost is a strong sense of self. The second one, I think, again, which continues to evolve, is clarity. Because clarity is, what am I doing, or where am I going, and why am I going there, and what am I going to be doing? And sometimes this is blurred, sometimes it makes more sense. It'll change because your purpose changes, but clarity gives you purpose. It makes your vision clearer for you. And also with clarity, I'm going to put another one there, is that ability to communicate that clarity, that ability to communicate your vision and your purpose. And for senior leaders, that's on top of my list. Because if you can, that's how you're going to do it. And the third one, and again, it's a critical one, I don't know where to put which one, is to be able to be outside of yourself and be present to others. To also live in a way that is bigger than me. To be engaged with other people And that's where comes everything emerges from there. Your team, your community, your networks, all your stakeholders. That's how your inspiration, your impact, your influence, that ability to be able to stand outside of myself and say, I have a strong sense of self, but hey, I am engaged in people outside of myself. And that's critical, because if you can't get outside of yourself, I don't think you'll ever be a really successful leader. Those are
that you did it so beautifully. I mean, if someone had lobbed that question to me, I'd have been all over the place. And yes, the clarity came through. So yes, thank you. So a question that one of our watchers has is, how do you assess which feedback is legitimate? And going kind of with it is, any advice for conducting mentoring relationships over video calls, telephones? Because this seems to be the new normal.
Yeah. I'll take the second one first. It's the easier one. So one of the key things you learn as you're mentoring and as you're coaching is to listen deeply. And when you're listening deeply, you're listening to more than just the words the other person is saying. You're listening for silences, you're listening for tone of voice, you can actually hear the excitement, you can hear the tentativeness, you can hear the joy, you can hear the hesitations, and when you're doing it over like the way we are doing it, I can see you. And there are times when I can see you nod, there are times when I'll see you saying, oh, really? And then I can see the question mark in your voice. So I'm also using my eyes to be all the time listening. So there's my listening mind, which is listening all the time. So really, how do you mentor over the phone and over virtual calls or over Zoom calls and things like this? Listen deeper, listen more, listen to what's between the words. And the first time I started doing a cohort, I remember it was in the US, and we had to do them over phone calls. Now I couldn't even see them. And I said, oh God, how am I going to do this? This was some 7 years ago. And they worked out fine, And I kept thinking to myself, what was I worried about? Because we were both trying to talk to each other, So, don't hesitate. Don't let that bind you down, And the first part of your question was about feedback, right?
Yeah.
Okay. This is a very tough one. And it goes back to what I was saying about your strong sense of self. So here's the thing in the sense of self. In a sense of self, there are things which you hold worthy for your own self-esteem, right? And there are things, or there are times in our lives when our self-worth and our self-esteem comes from being held in great estimation by others. We're always looking for validation by others, right? This is true of all of us. However, if you do work on yourself and your sense of self-worth and your sense of self-esteem is high, your awareness about yourself, and this is a continuous process, by the way, you continue to work on this, and you should work with a coach or a mentor on it, if not with yourself. If that is high, then when feedback comes and there's something false in it, you will know. Because there will be a part of you will say, but that is not my intent and that is not my value. So let me try and understand what showed differently that this person has understood it differently. So always acknowledge the feedback, because that feedback comes from someone. Try and understand what does it really mean? What is the intent of that feedback? And then try and sort of figure out, how does it hold true? Why is that person's perception? Did my actions say it? Did my communication say it? And sometimes, if you can, ask that person, what led you to believe this? Yeah? And that's how you take feedback. And if feedback de-energizes you, drop it off. Don't let it sit on your shoulders. There's nothing worse than having feedback slamming you down.
Wow.
Use it if you can, otherwise throw it off.
Which brings me to another very interesting question someone has posed, and this is typical for experts in technical field. She says that she's experienced ghosting from experts in the technical field when she needs help. So, and especially when they realize she's a junior person. So, any suggestions or anything you would recommend to her?
I think that comes from Medha. Medha, I don't know whether you're speaking about people and experts within your own organization or maybe from other organizations. If it's your own organization, it's great to just go and talk to the person or send the person a message to say, I'm trying to get in touch and I need your help on this. If you are busy or if you don't have them, should I go to someone else? And actually, so what you're saying to the person is, I know you haven't got back to me, but what I would like you to tell me is, should I wait or should I go to someone else? And do it. If it's happened recently, the pandemic has done weird things to people and their responses. Many people are facing the pressure, including very senior people who are experts. And so the thing to do really is to some extent, give them the benefit of the doubt. And that works well by actually saying or writing in or sending a text message to say, I sent this earlier, hope you got it. If you're too busy, happy to take this to someone else. Do let me know. And if the person still ignores you, hey, go to someone else. The thing is that even if the person is ghosting you because you think it's the fact that you're too junior, you can't own that all the time. That's their problem, right? You have to get on with what you have to get on with. You got to look for that other expert, There are many people who are as junior as you and who are looking at experts. And there are experts out there who are ready to help. So yeah, that can happen. I'm not telling you that these kind of things don't happen. They do. That's the reality of life.
True. Very true. Very true. And yeah, practical advice, that's really nice. So we have another person who wants to know specifically about feedback techniques. Anything that you can talk about in terms of when you're asking questions for feedback? Are there effective techniques to develop trust with not just with anyone, be it a customer or a surveyor, or any articles or any models for feedback techniques that you'd recommend maybe to this person? Anything comes to mind?
So when you're asking for feedback, in terms of what, and I'm going to share with you what has been working with my people I work with. So I don't know whether to call it a technique, but here's what's been working. Usually ask the people for feedback and connect it to them. So if I'm asking a client for feedback, I'll always say, in what I'm doing, is that serving you the way you want it? What could I do better to bring more value to you, right? Is what I'm saying answering your needs? I'm always linking. So remember that third thing, getting out of myself. I'm wanting the feedback for myself and what I'm doing. But in order to get really honest and good feedback, I've got to get out of myself. I've got to get into the shoes of the other person. That's the way I'll get the most honest feedback. When I link it up. If I ask somebody, did I do well? Can I do better? They'll say, no, you did great. That's not what I want. I really want to know how I want to do better. That's what feedback is for, right? You're asking for feedback because you want to know, how can I do this better? It's always about how can I do this better, right? Or how can we do this better if you're talking about your team or your organization, right? So connect it to the value that you're bringing to the person, or say, I'd love for this to work even better. Or I'd love for this to work in the way that you want it to work. What could we do differently? What could I be doing differently? It works even when you're asking people who are junior to you or your peers for your feedback. How did I do? And they'd say, great. How can I do it better? How would you like to do it differently? How could we do this differently? Or again, we go back to the people love to help. I'd love your help in improving this. And then people will give you feedback.
Wonderful.
It
Just
works.
simple. Yeah. Lovely. I love how you're making it easy to use in our day-to-day work. You're making getting feedback, giving feedback so easy for us to understand. So we have a lot of senior or mid-level first-time managers who have the role of becoming mentors to their reportees suddenly because of our circumstances. Anything that you would, any advice you'd give to them, because these are not trained people in psychology or communication, but they have to take care of their team. So what would any thoughts on what a normal person can do to don the hat of a mentor?
Just that honesty within yourself to invest in that other person, first of all. A lot of us love the thought of being mentors also. And that's great. That's lovely. I want to be a mentor. And immediately after you do that, step out of yourself and get into the other person. That honesty to say, I really want to see that other person do well. So think about where your intent is and communicate that intent. And then the second thing for me that's critical, and you know this as much as I know this, is just listen to that person. Figure out where that person wants to go. Everybody, whether you're 18 years old or you're 60 years old, everybody has their own answers. Everybody is different. Everybody actually knows inside them what they want. Sometimes they don't know how to articulate it. Sometimes they haven't dug it out of their self. And what you as a mentor are doing is guiding them to do that. So listen, not necessarily their answers. However, when you've heard them carefully and you've understood them, then some of your answers can apply to them. That's when you start thinking about, okay, so this is what she means. And maybe then you dig from your experience and say, here's what I think. What do you think? And get that person involved enough to own that, and to actually feel, wow, I'm getting this, I'm understanding this. It's not enough you telling.
True. Very nice. Lovely. Thank you. So let me ask you, you've had a wonderful journey. You've done things for yourself, helping people. What next for you? Do you have a next big dream? Anything that you want to explore and you'd like to share with us?
I have many, many dreams. Always. Travel more, paint more, do more theater, lots of dreams. But you know what, Richa, more and more coaching, more and more work, mentoring, working, helping people, establish a very strong sense of self, helping communities and people establish a strong sense of respect, which is at the bottom of most good cultures. I'd love to be able to work with larger communities internally, whether it's organizations or social communities. I'd love to be able to work with governments because, finally, at the end of the day, our social, who we are becoming is so influenced by so many things. Governance is one of them, and so yeah, just doing more, I think, is my next big dream. It's I think I've been fortunate enough to fulfill a lot of those dreams.
How nice, how wonderful. So just a little more on, just to probe a little more, any thoughts you'd like to share on, organizations which are working remotely right now? Anything that they can do? I'm not even getting into the government part, but anything that you would recommend to organizations for doing on mentoring right now? Anything that you'd like to share?
Yeah, and some organizations are already doing it. It's a very tough time for organizations as well as the who are made up of the people who work for within that organizations. And speaking especially to an audience which is a lot in technology, I realize technology organizations have such a lot of pressure. I have clients within this space, and I know the kind of pressure this has, and the way that these organizations function. Um, so while the organization itself has programs in play, um, and at every level, if organizations can have mentoring happening, because at each level you have the ability to mentor someone else. It could be a peer, it could be someone who's working with you. Okay? And it doesn't have to be every day. It can be once a month. It can be once in 15 days. It can be when needed. But to put that in place, to help people go through, have a very easy mechanism to come back and air and talk about the challenges they're facing. It has to be easy. It has to be simplified. And many organizations are doing this. They're simplifying their mechanisms of feedback, coming back to the organization, saying I need help, getting people to allowing people what they call these days the psychologically safe spaces to be vulnerable and know that it won't impact you professionally. So a lot of us, even when we are younger, and some of you hearing this may know that we are scared to speak up because we think, what will people think of us as, nobody think of me as a leader if I turn around and say I'm, scared of doing this, or I'm feeling hesitant about doing this. So that is also for the organization to build that culture of being allowed to say within spaces that I'm hesitant about this. That doesn't make me less of a leader. It doesn't make me a worse leader, but I'm able to say, how do I do this? I'm able to ask for support. So creating psychologically safe spaces, and not as policy, as actual day-to-day practice, okay? And not impacting basis. So many companies have leader as coach programs or mentor as leader as mentor, which means to be a leader at any level, whether it's a line manager or it's another one, you have to be a mentor and learn to be one.
Wonderful. That's such a lovely thought to leave everyone with. Yes, I think that is so true. And there was a question, but I think you answered that. A young lady wanted to know about this, and she's already commented. Thank you so much, Anita. Mentoring, coaching, all these are concepts which are very esoteric to some of us. And you've made it so easy for all of us to understand that, one, we can reach out and be that for someone, and how to do it. And that's something that's really amazing. So
thank you, Richa. I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. Thank you. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And of course, all the people I can't see, thank you so much. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for being such a lovely audience and for the wonderful questions. And we look forward to you for our next WiTalk. Thank you.